2019. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Excuse me, burp. So one of the things that I'm thinking about a little bit in the last couple of days is sugar. I've always had it's something that is as with many people has been my whole life, is a tendency to want to eat more sugar than I probably should, or that is healthy for me. And that being the, operative measure by which I should or shouldn't do something. And in theory, if we're talking about like refined sugars, probably the actual healthy amount is 0, because you don't actually need that at all. Not in any nutritional sense in any case. But it's one thing to say that, you can absolutely have some of those things. But moderation is always the key, because, that is the sort of food that I think a lot that you can get into. I don't know if a compulsion is quite, that feels too strong a word, but a tendency that having a small amount of sugar does not satiate the craving. And what tends to happen is that, for example, with something like ice cream or candy or popsicles, there's a feeling of like, oh, I've had a little bit and now I need more, and now I need more, and now I need more, and then I realize that I've had way too much. And so just in the interest of trying to have a healthier lifestyle, I'm trying to get back into an exercise routine, which I worked out again yesterday. But I'm also trying to eat better, and I kind of recognize that it's easy for me to get into these routines, for example, where like there's a brand of popsicles that I like, fruit-based, and they're very tasty. And if I had like even one per day, probably not too big. I have more than one in my freezer, and I have one, that does not satisfy the urge. It just leaves me one and another one and another one and another one until I've had the whole box and I'm out. And then tomorrow, more popsicles. And then suddenly I've eaten, more than I think anyone would agree is an appropriate amount of popsicles. Again, defining appropriate only in the context of what is the healthy thing. Now, you don't always have to do the healthy thing, but it becomes a habit, right? It's one thing to say a whole box of popsicles every once in a while. Well, it's probably not good. But the problem starts becoming when you do that 3-4 times a week, right? And so, and popsicles, it's just about like that was sort of the most recent pattern I was observing. And so right now what I'm trying to do is something I have done for a while before, which is to really try to cut the refined sugars essentially to 0. It's harder for me to manage the moderation, and so it's easier in some respects to, and yet that's dangerous too, because then you start feeling deprived, and then you start getting to that point where you feel like, no, am I being over dramatic? It wouldn't hurt to have a little, and then you have a little, and then you've given yourself permission to have some more, and then pretty soon you're back to where you started. I'm sure that these are struggles that many others have before, and myself. And of course, there are echoes of things like substance abuse and eating disorders in there. And I'm not claiming to be there. it's certainly, you know, adjacent to some of those things, right? Because it's a thing in the brain. Your body doesn't actually need it. It just enjoys it. And so, but it's the brain that gets into that little feedback loop. And that's where you short circuit or circumvent those mental patterns. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at today, part of what I'm thinking about. And so I'm going to leave it there, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Won't that be sweet? But ching.